Well, good morning, friend. It's Sunday morning here. I'm in a hotel. I've been here now 4 or 5 days. Tomorrow's my last day, as you know, and I'm heading back to Vietnam. I've been thinking about these stories in relation to you, and they're all three from the Bible. I don't know how long it'll take to retell them, so I may make more than one video. Okay, first story. A young man listened to one of Jesus' sermons. He just walked around and talked, standing somewhere in nature on a street corner or wherever he happened to be, and people would gather around. And he told Jesus that he was really impressed with the sermon and he wanted to become one of his followers, and that his father had just died the day before or so, and he was the eldest son, and he had filial responsibilities to manage the funeral for his father, a cultural expectation of his community. It's still true in India and other countries in Asia where the eldest son in particular, but even the next born son, have these responsibilities culturally at the time of someone's death. So this is what Jesus said. He listened to the man, and then he said, "Let the dead bury the dead." It's a real famous quote. It's really harsh. There doesn't seem to be any compassion there, any sympathy for the young man having lost his father. And he says, let the dead bury the dead. So obviously the meaning is cultural expectations are not important when compared to spiritual commitments. That the people who are mourning the dead man have not understood the laws of nature. They're what Mahabua says are the zombies. They're walking dead also. They're dead because they're dead to the Dhamma. So this harsh statement wasn't enough to shock the young man into making a choice between pleasing his mother and family members and the culture, or learning to walk the path of Dhamma. And there's no more to that story. He did not follow Jesus. The next story is about two fishermen who had been out on a lake, I think it's Galilee, and they'd fished all night and they hadn't had any luck. Came back tired and discouraged. And Jesus was there, right where they landed their boat, and they spoke together. I don't have a Bible reference, so I can't tell this story accurately. But anyway, Jesus talked to them, and they were inspired by his little Dhamma talk. And he said to them, "Come, follow me, and stop being a fisher of fish and become a fisherman of men." In other words, come and teach the Dhamma and save mankind. Forget about being a fisherman. And the two men said, okay, and they walked off and followed Jesus. That was it. That was the end of it. In the Bible, they did not go home. They did not explain anything to their families. It doesn't mention if they're married or had children or were the eldest sons. None of that information is given. Just that they dropped their secular life completely and went and followed Jesus with no promise of anything. Jesus didn't work, his disciples didn't work. They had to go begging in the morning, just like Buddhist monks do today. They slept wherever they were when night came, sometimes invited guests in a house, sometimes under a tree, very similar to the simplicity and difficulties of Lord Buddha and his disciples. Now, the third story is actually about Lord Buddha. You know the story, but I'm going to retell it. He was going to be the king. He was a prince. He had 3 different palaces. He had the most expensive clothes money could buy. He had adoring and loving parents. He was married. His wife had just given birth to a baby boy, which is great rejoicing, firstborn son, so important. And he left that life entirely. There are various accounts. Some of them say his mother was laying on the floor, grabbing his lower leg, crying and begging him not to go. Certainly his wife would have been in shock, losing her husband and the father of their newborn son. His father was also so in shock. And he left anyway. He turned his back on the social culture of his time, on his family, on his wife, and he did not parent his own son. This is open to some criticism by people who don't appreciate what he sacrificed and then the blessing that everyone got because of the sacrifice he made. If I'm not mistaken, he named his son Rahula, which means a fetter or binding. He knew if he stayed a few days, a few weeks playing with his son, his heart would be with his son and not with trying to find the cause of suffering and the way out of suffering. History tells us that eventually his mother, as you know, was actually his stepmother, the sister of his real mother, came and became the first nun, became fully enlightened, liberated. And when his father became ill and was dying, he returned to the palace, taught his father the Dhamma. His father also became Arhan. And the story also claims that he went up to heaven, found his mother in one of the heavenly abodes, and taught her how to become fully enlightened. So this commitment, this sacrifice, this rejection of cultural norms, this disappointment towards family, friends, and loved ones has a cost, but it's worth paying that price if we can learn the Dhamma, and if we're lucky, once we have mastered it enough, we could share it with our family if they are interested. The Buddha says it's the greatest gift we can give our parents. So there's some thoughts that I'm having towards you and your situation, your culture, and your mother. And I recognize you're 20 years old. You're dependent on your family for your education, your housing, etc. You're going to be 21 soon, and that doesn't have the same meaning in your culture that it does in the West. I'm just encouraging you to recognize there will come a time when you're going to disappoint people, anger them. Some of them may ostracize you, kick you out of their friendship realm. There are Christian traditions when the child at any age leaves that religious tradition. It's called shunning, and no one who's still in the tradition is allowed to speak to that person again. That person cannot go home. They cannot come back to their parents' house. They can't speak to anyone in that religion unless they repent and decide to go back to that religion. So this is common in religions and common in cultures that people pay a social price. We're going to pay the ultimate price if we practice Dhamma. We're going to give up everything. We will give up family and friends. That's easy. We'll give up a comfortable home life, an automobile, whatever other luxuries that we have. The hardest thing will be to give up our opinions, our value system, the belief that we're a person who is giving up things that make life painful to give up, etc. But that's the work for anyone who's sincere in their Dhamma practice. Okay, look forward to seeing you soon.